Okay, in this first skill, we're going to learn how to annotate a photograph. And annotating a photograph is where you give some information about the photo that you're looking at. So how to do this in a Google Doc is that the first thing you're going to want to do is select the photo we're going to annotate, which is our photo of a Corrie, which is the landscape feature that we're looking at. Okay, we're next going to cut that from the screen. So there's a couple of ways you can do that. You can right-click and cut, which is one option to remove it, or you can actually use the CTRL button on your keyboard and use the X at the same time. Press that button and that will cut it. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to insert that. So click on the insert menu, scroll down to where it says drawing, and we're going to go with a new. So we're going to create a new drawing now. Okay, what we're now going to do is we're going to, once it's loaded up, we're going to paste that photograph we just cut into our Google drawing. So there's two ways you can do that. You can right click and paste, and that will paste it. But you can also use the CTRL button and then press the V on your keyboard, and that would also, that's a shortcut for pasting. Now I'm just going to move my photograph into the middle of the draw tool because I want to add some key annotations. So what is an annotation? It's where I'm just pointing out some main things. So here we have the Corrie itself. This is the landscape feature that we're thinking about today. And I want to just point that out. So I'm going to draw a little arrow to some of the features of this Corrie. So the first thing is we've got a small little round lake in our Corrie. So I've added an arrow. So I've done that by selecting this button up here. And I want to say what that is. So this is a Corrie lake. It's got an actual name. So I'm going to type that, Corrie lake, known as and it's called a tarn. So how did I do that? I selected the T up here in the menu, the text box. I dragged a space for my text, and I can change my text orientation if I want. I could go for a centered approach, which would be this button here. And there we go. So there's my first annotation. Other bits of information that I want to add. I'm going to add an arrow because at the back of my Corrie, I've got another of our features that we're going to be studying in another lesson, at the top of the mountain. And you might remember that from the last lesson. That is called a pyramidal peak. That's wrong. So I'm just going to correct that. We are pyramidal peak. So that's the jagged summit of the mountain. And a third feature that we've got, which we're also going to be looking at in another lesson, will be the thin, narrow ridge that you would walk up to get to the peak. Okay, it's a kind of a knife-edged ridge, and it's known as an arête. So I'm going to do that as an extended annotation, so not just a simple label. So a ridge leading to summit, known as an arête. Arête is a French word that actually means the spine of a book, which is, oddly enough, a bit like what an arête would actually look like. So what else have we got, apart from these two other features? Well, we can see that the back of the Corrie, the area that I'm highlighting, is very steep. It's what we call a steep back wall. So I'm going to add my arrow, point to the back of my Corrie, and add an annotation that says Corrie has a steep back wall. Okay. What else can I see? Well, if I look closely at my photograph, I can see that at the bottom of this back wall, there's lots of loose rubble. So if I was to walk around into this Corrie and go around the back here, I'd find loads of boulders and rocks that have broken off this steep back wall, and they've rolled down to the bottom of the slope, okay, and they've built up there. Now, that is caused by a process that you've already been introduced to called freeze-thaw action. It's a type of weathering. It's where water gets into cracks and expands in winter. And that means the crack expands and eventually the boulder will just break off. So I want to have all of that in this big label. I'm going to call it an annotation. A label is just where you have a simple word like pyramidal peak. An annotation is where you give a bit of an extension to your label. So I'm going to put a scree slope from rock that falls off the back wall due to freeze thaw weathering. So I'm not, and the scree slope, a scree is just a word we use to describe a large collection of rocks that build up at the bottom of slopes. You see them all over Scotland, okay? And they're always created because of this freeze thaw process, okay? Now, almost finished. We have got, our Corrie's got an open front, okay? There's no back wall at the front, and that's because there would have been a glacier in this 15,000 years ago, and it would have traveled in this direction. It built up in the Corrie here, and it would have moved outwards of the Corrie. So our front is open, and it actually has got a slight little raise to it. It's what we call the lip of the Corrie, a bit like the lip on your mouth, which is the front of your mouth. That's what the lip represents. So the Corrie has an open front called the lip. Now what you can see is we've got a diagram, a photograph, where I've added information about my landscape feature. Okay, I'm now ready to insert that into my diagram. So I'm going to do save and close. And you'll find your photo has come back in this time, but this time I have added that key information in, and you're ready to move on with the next task. So this task involves you annotating this picture, which gives you the key information about this landscape feature called the Corrie.